more in depth. So let's welcome back on the stage Jordan Bozmaro from Ericsson. Welcome.
Thank you.
Here you go. Lev Lapkis from RD Alpha Microelectronics. Yanis Astachos from Samsung. And we just heard him, Mr. Holger Schluter from ScanLab. And to help me with this stage, let's welcome to the stage its moderator. He's a computer scientist and an entrepreneur at the highly successful startup Long Genesis, Mr. Emil Syundikov. A round of applause.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to see artists on stage. So starting from the, being a course mate at university, doing undergraduate in computer science, and finishing up here at this beautiful event. Thank you so much for the presentations, dear audience. I will just quickly remind what artists mentioned before. So we will be very happy to hear your questions. So please raise your hands, and my colleague artists and the colleagues here will help us to orchestrate the questions and pass the microphone. In parallel with that, we have a Mito platform to ask questions online. But nevertheless, and also, dear panelists, if you have questions based on the presentations if you heard, we'll be happy to address this. So let's start to warm up. So Jordan, and I will quote Yanis, one of the slides from Yanis, that time is the only thing. So one of the musicians stated that. So while you were presenting about microwave liquid crystals, I went to Merck, which is one of the pharma companies' website, and they stated that the liquid crystals have been explored for more than 110 years. And innovation is still coming up, still coming up. You mentioned different applications and different technology readiness levels. So how long does it take, like from the idea or problem statement to the proof of concept in such industries? And what are the obstacles the challenges you're facing during the R&D stage?
I can tell you this microwave application of the liquid crystal in the microwave was extremely challenging because the panel manufacturers, they have to adopt their technology to these new requirements. And when you start to make this POC with Aucan and AGC together, we have to overcome a lot of absolutely new technology challenging from the manufacturing point of view to the transparency point of view, because then it must be transparent also, and to select proper liquid crystal for milk. Also, we have to solve the problem for the UV resistance. I can tell honestly that it was extremely hard working for 12 months. 12 months we did it without any test structures, because we have no time, and the time schedule in order to go to the market was very tight. And we succeed. We succeed 12 months, but 12 months is extremely, let's say, challenging period.
Thank you so much. So coming to Lev, you were mentioning about Latvia and Latvian legacy as a pioneer in semiconductors field. So basically, how do you feel whether the legacy is still there as a basement layer for jumping off with new applications?
Obviously, yeah. First of all, of course, we need to start with the preparation of new specialists and to motivate them to stay here, because it's the core of the problem. Because young engineers, it's what we're missing in the industry.
So you think the talent acquisition and basically bringing the talents are the key components to the success?
From the one point of view, it's heritage, it's knowledge, but very important is young engineers.
Okay, so let's run a round of quick questions before we move to the discussion and to the question from the audience. So Yanis, you mentioned that, once again, quoting your slides, so I've did a couple of research and noting sessions. So you mentioned simply, clear, understandable. So that's the key components of the visual communication. And how you would envision, so we were speaking about R&D phase, and as Jordan mentioned, it can be months, years of trial and errors. How visual communication can be integrated there to increase the acceptance of technology, to increase the engagement in technology, maybe help Lev with one of the components of attracting talents through visual communication?
Thank you for the question. I think overall, we've been using this word over and over again. It's communication. That's how you actually improve it. It's straightforward. But to be fair, I would have to say that screens in general do help us to basically improve processes, and that's actually when it speaks to clarity and brightness of the screens and the content as well. In terms of these both gentlemen, I think you all use screens on a day-to-day basis. The only issue, I mean, I'm not in your business, but the only issue what I've seen, when you go to different factories, is that, the screens that people are looking at, they're not clear enough. The picture is not clear enough, the mission is not clear enough, and so on and so on. But this is completely different, because what I was trying to pinpoint, and the main benefits is the screens that we see on day-to-day life. And the usage of those screens are completely, let's say, I wouldn't say different, but they're used for different reasons. But bottom line is communication is the key.
Thank you so much. I think this is what we're doing here, and thanks to the event, we can communicate any further in more details. So coming back to Hulga, you've mentioned brilliant videos, like we were watching. It's, there's a trend of ASMR in, YouTube videos where people are watching how lasers are cutting and hearing also some sounds, and that's impressive. And for sure interested in the jeans bleaching application. Maybe we can see that in one of the evenings event, how the bleached jeans from laser machine are looking. Before the discussion, you were mentioning about the Baltic region and also the skill set and the basement layer we have in laser applications. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about what do you see in the Baltic region as as a place for competence in the laser industry.
Yes, absolutely. So obviously in Latvia there is a fiber optic market. There are fiber optic companies, and there is a whole ecosystem around that. And in Lithuania there is a large laser ecosystem around laser manufacturing. Laser beam sources are made there for ultra-short pulse lasers by 2 companies, and then there are, I think, 200 companies around that, these laser beam source manufacturers that generate business for the Baltic region, and it's very impressive what they have set up there.
Thank you so much. So we touched base on the point of cross-collaboration, because each innovation cannot be just focused in one place or one small team. It's always about working together. On left, you were showing one of the slides the collaboration with the European Space Agency, one of the photos in front of the building of your company. And so how would you describe, and what are the factors to increase the collaboration, between different teams, maybe in the Baltic region or even beyond it? So what should be the factors to increase it, to bring new innovations to the market?
So we mean about a collaboration. So first of all, we need to know what our neighbors do. Mm-hmm. So of course, we industrial companies, we do not do advertisement. Of course, Samsung does. But we don't do advertisement for Latvian market. And such events, it is very important to know what our neighbors does. So we have organization like Latvian LETERA, it's like Association of Electronic Producers. And we need to communicate more, and also in these changing worlds, when we are losing, if we lost one part of market, it's very important to understand how we can diversify, how we can collaborate together, to understand that we are not competitors with one another, but we can help. Industry should help one another. And it's what's happening right now in our electronic industry, that we are talking and we are looking what neighbor can help. It's important.
Thanks a lot. So we start once again coming back to the topic of communication here. So once again, the follow-up question to Jānis. So apart, we will be coming to the topic of of the business and bringing the products. But coming back to what Lev mentioned about science communication. So what, based on your experience and presentation, what should be the so-called lessons learned or main factors to be emphasized for the science communication and enhancing the collaboration, as Lev outlined, between the countries? Or
is that reflects to the presentation or in general?
Based on your experience, for sure, but yeah.
I think, in every industry there's a certain bits and bobs that actually do work and don't work. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to science, I think overall, in terms of, I think it's just clear the message out, what are the benefits of being in industry and how to channel the industry forward. Because ambitions-wise, I think Latvia has what it takes. It's just getting the statement out. Because I understood one of the statements what Lev was saying is that just keeping the people in and just attracting them to the industry. To be fair, to me this is rocket science, and I've been living in Latvia for the past 4 years. So, and this is, I think, again, we're going back to communication, because it's just getting the name out. You know, big brands came into the country, IT tech companies, and they've, you know, they kind of succeeded with it. Yes, one was the payroll, right? Another was a completely different. You know, the companies actually are differentiating themselves. The payroll is not the main point anymore. It's the ecosystem that you create, that people are want to staying within your company and join your company. And I think that would actually make a difference, because at the end of the day, big companies are no longer, you know, just here's your payroll, here's your, you know, security, welfare, and thank you very much. It's just ecosystem. And by creating ecosystem and channeling the message why this industry is so good, could attract more people, to me.
Good. So we're emphasizing on dynamic communication. So basically, not waiting until the science will get out of the lab in 10 or maybe, you know, dozen of years, but actually doing this through the prototypes in different TRL stages, or cool videos of laser cutting the stuff, which was, you know, quite impressive for the audience at least. And so Jordan, you were showing several prototypes at different TRL stages, like the transparent antennas on the glass of the car, etc. And basically, the question there is, what are the factors to introduce such tech in the city environment? Maybe to emphasize one of the next panels on the AI and smart city. So you showed this transparent antenna and how it works in the base stations of one of the technology of Ericsson. So what, in your opinion, should be the things that the city infrastructure should do to introduce such technologies?
First of all, I want to tell you that the proof of concept
Sure.
is one stage, but to implement it in a product, this is at least extremely difficult. And in order to be implemented, first of all, several problems has to be solved. For example, Ericsson, they solved very well the problem with so-called wireless power supply of the base station. They use special technology for wireless powering. That means you can make, without using any wireless power cables, you can distribute the energy. The second is to, let's say, customer to be convinced that the transparent antenna are one of the futures for the 5G telecommunication, because the window glasses has big losses, and it has to be used inside. And that's it. They must be, let's say, the next step must be very proactively participating in the marketing and convincing the operators for the benefit of using these antennas.
Sure. So there are different technological aspects.
Yeah,
and,
this
and
technological aspect.
For sure. Yeah.
Yes,
so
let's say.
Thank you, Helga. So as also representative of one of the industrial research and development companies, so in your opinion, what are the factors postponing the innovations going out of the lab or prototyping stage? Apart from technological ones, for sure, which is, we all know that such innovations are deep tech based.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I think when you make a plan for a new product development, where you start with a really new technology. I'm not saying a new product that you derive from an existing product, but if you start with a new product development, then you typically make a plan that it takes you about 2 years. And in my experience, it takes probably a factor of pi longer than that, and it costs a factor of pi more than what you previously planned. So what is the key factor for making a new product development successful is you need to have patience. I think that's the most important part of it. You need to have patience, and you have to have the money to follow through with your idea, even if you have throwbacks.
Thank you. Yeah. So I'm just, making notes about the factors. Yeah. So as you mentioned before, apart from communication, also patience. Yeah, Lev, please.
Yeah, Emil, I would like to agree with what colleague said about the patience. It's also, if someone thinks to collaborate with European Space Agency, you need to understand that in space, fast is only rockets. Everything else is takes a lot of time. It's very slow. In order to submit proposal, get a contract signed, can take a year. Right. And also, we will take about our route of Latvia towards the associate member state, okay, partnership state. It took, so we submitted proposal in 2013, then our parliament didn't want to get money, we got the money in 2015, and all this time, companies were waiting. And that's why it's frightening the market, because startup can't wait for a year in order to get this contract. Understand what I'm talking about? You need to have another business except space. Space can be not more than 30% of your turnover. If it is more than, you need to live from the contract to contract.
I totally understand this. Coming back from pharma business, where collaboration cycles are also quite slow. It's sometimes as the same as launching the rocket to space. But before coming back to one of the factors, which is also regulation, which is also affecting quite a lot of bringing innovations to the market, I would just remind our brilliant audience, if you have any questions, please do raise your hands, and my colleagues will help you out and orchestrate with a mic, as well as Artis is the one also moderating the online questions. So if you have any and you're at home because of the heavy rains, or you're watching us online from different countries or regions, please do not hesitate to post your question online on the Meeto platform. So coming back to the, not coming back, but diving deeper into one of the factors making collaboration cycles slower is also regulation and policy making. And starting with Lev, once again, with a follow-up question. So you mentioned the European act that will be benefiting the chipset industry, so basically investing more money and investing into the talent acquisition. So, and you mentioned that it will help us to compete with other regions. So I have two small questions. So basically, what should be also the factors included in the act as such for it to be successful, for it to raise the industry as such? And the second small question about the competing with different regions. So how to compete and whether we need to compete or whether we should find certain niches to do the synergies.
Yeah, it's a really hard question because I don't much understand what's happening inside of this closed group of preparation European Act, and its Ministry of Economics is doing. We will help them, but we see that. So in all those collaboration like ESA, CEN, we are competing in Europe with large countries, France, Italy, Germany, that are getting the biggest pie of it. And also in terms of this European Chip Act, of course, I think most of money will be invested to Germany, to France, I think, to build their foundries. Because they have foundries, X-Fab, such piece, and ST microelectronics, in order to have a possibility to build small 5 nanometers and 3 nanometers processors. In Latvia, don't even think that it's possible to invest those billions here, but also we can have some small pie of it in order to developing, engineering, testing, assembly, studies, and something like this. So we need to have a round table to understand, communicate again, to get all our competencies, understand what we can do there. Because of course, I'm afraid that no one will see Alpha, big factory that was building millions of chips here for consumer market, because of course better it is to invest small amount of money, small like this, yes, into the Germany and French foundries in order to to follow up Taiwan market, because in this changing world we see that Europe should be independent. We cannot have a dependency on the Asian and USA market, and also it's coming for talking about such markets of ESA and military market. It's a big problem for European Space Agency in order to procure integrated circuits from USA if the satellite will be used for a Chinese. End of sometime before the February, it also was a problem with Russia. When European Space Agency had a collaboration with Russia, they could not use USA components.
Sure. So coming forward with a follow-up question. So Helga, so as you work in industrial R&D, how and whether do you see that regulatory affects the go-to-market within different industries? I assume that genes bleaching is a little bit softer than eye surgery for sure, but yeah, whether there are any changes that should be introduced, or any acceleration programs.
Yeah, obviously here in Europe we are very good in regulating everything before it's invented, and that causes some trouble. Luckily, in my industry, we're a components manufacturer. We're not regulated. We're not highly regulated yet. The machine end customer is regulated. They have to take care of regulations. They suffer from that. The medical industry is tremendously regulated, and it certainly causes innovation to enter the medical market much slower than it could. So it's diverse. So there is, on every level, there's a different level of complexity that needs to be addressed.
So Jordan, coming back to you, so you were emphasizing also on different technology readiness levels and proof of concepts. So how do you feel whether a regulatory framework and approach sometimes limits or vice versa accelerates the from idea to prototyping stage, or are there any things or challenges for you as a project manager, as a scientist as well?
Okay, one of the problems is this is how to regulators are going to react, but also I speak not only in the field of the telecommunication, it's also in the military field. And one of the challenges also in this field, this is the radars applications for the military aspect, of course, we have to fulfill very tight their specification. Doesn't mean the challenges in the telecommunication, this is the operators, this regulation. In military, this is the quality of the system. And this niche now has to be further developed. For example, I didn't point it out in my presentation, but for the high power radars, which are very useful for the surveillance, they can implement the liquid crystal itself with another type of architecture. But the problem of the limited temperature range has to be solved. And this is not a technology issue. Doesn't mean that this is vice versa. First of all, the operators, the regulation, and after that, the technology issues, they have to be solved in parallel. I think the technology issues must be solved first, and after that, based on the result, has to be done the regulations lately.
So it's once again the synergy aspect between tech, regulatory, communication, patience, as Hilgert outlined. So
and consistency. We have to be very consistent, and that's it. This is very important. Consistency.
Consistency is the key, as we all know. Yes. So, Jānis, you showed us tremendous technology, and as we use in everyday life. So, I assume there are people using lasers in everyday life as well. But the products of Samsung and also the technology is being widely used. And coming back to what Jordan mentioned about the synergy of different aspects, you're quite synergetic because you take the best out of all of the beforehand presentations and presenters. So how does it work in a company like yours, combining all of this, bits and pieces and forming this beautiful picture out of the puzzle of, R&D, marketing, et cetera, et cetera. So how do you basically bring such innovations to the market?
I think in general, as any other big corporate structure, you have different departments that are responsible for certain things. It's like basically a huge anthill. Everybody does its own part, and that's how it all comes together. And that's what actually differentiates, a bigger corporations versus the smaller corporations. Because in smaller corporations, usually certain tasks are spread out to, let's say, a singular person. In our case, everybody does its piece, and that's how it goes together. In our case, when it comes to display organizations, so this is a very small part of the entire Samsung family, and that's Samsung Electronics. If we move forward, you could speak about Burj Khalifa and so on and so on, medical fair and transportation logistics and so on. However, let's say I'll speak only about our department. In our department in Baltics, we are not more than 14 people. We have a person who's responsible for marketing. We have key account managers. Me, then we have technical pre-support, then we have STMs, and then product managers, and that's basically everybody does its own part. That's how it all gets together.
But coming back to the communication question, so basically you're on the forefront of innovation. So the tech you're developing or making a proof of concept, for sure should have a plan, as Hilgert outlined. So each one of us should have a plan. So how do you communicate to your customers or to to the public the innovations that are too new to be to understand this? So what is the key there?
I think going back what the colleague was saying, as one wise man said, plan is nothing, plan is everything, first of all. And then, moving forward, how do we do it? It's obviously, it's two different segments. You have two different segments, meaning one is B2C. That's basically where we, for example, right now, sitting and speaking to the end customer directly. And then we have B2B, which is completely different. And then for those channels, we use various fairs, obviously, knocking on the doors that have never been open, and, there's different strategies for it. But mainly, let's say, when it comes to exposure of newest display technologies, there's a lot of fairs worldwide. Recently was in ISA in Barcelona, then there's one in Las Vegas as well every year, and so on and so on. So there's various channels how to communicate what's new in the world. For B2C, it's a bit slightly different because these are the market, basically products that are in the market already that are available for public. In our case, this is a bit more, I would say, different because it's more business oriented.
Sure, it's about pinpointing the exact problem of the challenge. And Hilgard, lasers have been widely known for many, many years, and people from the audience were referring to Star Wars or Jedis, but there are more more realistic use cases as well. So how you as a company define the pain points within different industries? Because we've seen dozens of industry applications, starting from fashion to healthcare, space, military. So how does this process work? How you engage with stakeholders to define the pain there? You can cure with laser.
Well, that's typically somebody has an idea, and then he looks for the components that he needs to put his idea into practice, and then he finds companies that make lasers, he finds companies that make scanning equipment like we do, and puts it all together. So the key ingredient is the inventor. You have to have an inventor that envisions something and puts it all together. So that's how things come together, and that's why this whole stage is so important. This whole event is so important, because we are celebrating the inventor here, and we are looking for new entrepreneurs that take new ideas into reality, and that's how new applications come about.
Thank you. Looking at artists, I assume that we have a question or comment, please.
Yes, we have microphones there in the second row. Yes, please state your name and who you represent, maybe.
This is on? Okay. Hey, I am Alec. I am not a scientist. I'm a semiotician. So my question is for Yanis. Regarding visual communication, communication obviously is embodied within culture. How, if anything, do you see an actual impact in semiotics for Samsung, or is semiotics kind of just overlooked?
Would you be so kind and repeat the question? The second part? I didn't hear it, sorry.
Would you say there's any sort of impact of semiotics inside of Samsung's operation?
With all due respect, I'm not sure I can disclose certain things that's happening within the company, but it does have an impact. Yes, it does.
Okay.
Overall.
Okay.
I hope it
replies
the answer.
All right, thank you. Yeah, please do raise your hands. It's time for questions. We have a few more minutes left and would like to hear from you most definitely. Please do raise your hands. We have microphones here and there, and we're going to let you speak and maybe comment. That's also possible. 3, 2, 1. If you're not keen on questions yet, a warm-up question from my side maybe. We opened up the conference with 2 very inspiring keynote presentations on the space race that Europe is getting into. So we already heard some tips from the speakers on how scientists also from Latvia can get into it. First of all, do you see that this is a chance for science commercialization? Is it so maybe easy as it was said on the stage? If you are a scientist, we can find a place for you in the space race. And if it is, maybe your tips and tricks for aspiring business people and scientists here in the audience that maybe see it also as a possibility. Open question, maybe who feels like speaking on this? I know that Lev has some experience in this, and you already spoke about the contract lengths as a challenge. Maybe you could continue on this, and maybe colleagues can join in.
Okay, of course. So, as mentioned, Latvia is a shaded state for European Space Agency and also for CERN from, I think, January of this year. So if you're a student you can just look what there is possibilities and go as an intern into these international organizations. And from this it begins. Another possibility is to, so in the pavilion there is an ignition event that's finishing right now, but also previous years also, there are some space ideas were presented. You can just take a lead of this idea. And next year we hope that will be business incubator, European Space Agency business incubator for those ideas. So there are a couple of possibilities you can do, and I know that European Space Agencies, there are a lot of interns that work there and after some time returns and continues their job in Riga Technical University and so on. So space is closer than it's possible. And also our friend Paul Svirbins here and also couples of unknown Latvians were candidating for European astronauts. Unfortunately, Paul was dismissed, fortunately, but there are also chances for first Latvian landing on the moon soon.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so. Why not? Why not? Colleagues, any more comments on the space race and its possibility?
I want to bring something into the attention that is not for immediate commercialization, but it inspired me a lot, and that is that people are dreaming of the one problem with rockets is that you have to have a large amount of fuel to put a small amount of payload into the space, and therefore people have dreamed about space elevators, and space elevators would solve that problem by creating, you have a long pole, and that pole is 36,000 kilometers long, or even 72,000 kilometers to counterbalance it, and it stretches itself by the centrifugal force, and then you can ride up and down the space elevator with elevator caps, and these caps need to be propelled. And for that, lasers come into play. So that's another application for lasers, is in order to provide the energy for the space elevators to move up and down. And another topic is space-propelled vehicles, laser-propelled vehicles that are also ideas to propel tiny vehicles to up to almost light speed by shooting at them with high-power lasers.
Coming to your nearest theme park in the not-so-distant future, hopefully.
Yeah, so taking respect of the time, so if I'm to sum up, apart from the brilliant presentations of the panel speakers, so what Holger mentioned about elevators coming to space, so in order to elevate the technologies and innovations, so the key components that we discussed were the communication, the right elements of communication coming both to the broader audience as well as to the stakeholders, patience, engagement, consistency, and praising the culture of being an inventor as such. So on this note, I will pass the word to Artis, and I will thank all of the panelists once again with a round of applause from the audience, both virtually and physically.